It's been a slow crawl to an apex on light item veto. I don't know if we're there yet, but we'll talk about it tonight.
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
You know, I could say something dramatic at the top of the show to keep you glued. You know, kind of teasing the line item veto is certainly not something that, I don't know if it fires you up or not, but it's one of the things that the state of Rhode Island does not have, where most states do. And although the Speaker of the House argues that it's rather ineffective, I think he's beginning to lose that argument. The governor, who has had to be dragged along here in support, does support it. Editorials are moving toward that. And one of the mover shakers on this, one of the key guys on this, has been Ken Block, a two-time gubernatorial candidate. He's here tonight to talk about where we are. There's a big hearing tomorrow at the legislature regarding this. Big is in quotes. I don't know whether it's going to be an effective hearing, but certainly hope it will be. We'll discuss that this evening. How are you? Great to have you aboard. Thanks for tuning in. Let's go to the rundown and check on a couple of things. So this has actually been subtly covered. It's kind of like this fait accompli, all part of the Raimondo economic plan, that we incentivize a single entity, a single project, some $40 million, near $40 million anyway. The $13.5 million referenced here is the last tax credit piece of the puzzle for this Wexford company, a developer who's done the same kind of project in St. Louis and in North Carolina. It's called an innovation center. It's a 195 project, and gosh knows we need some innovation in projects at 195. But we're in this unenviable position, again, of having to digest Governor Raimondo's theory on economic development, which is that you pick winners and then there are losers, those who don't get that kind of money. Frankly, if we've got $40 million available for a single project, I have to think, once again, how many businesses could be retained and or grown that are here in Rhode Island with that kind of money, even through tax incentives. The point of the matter is here, unless we get an even playing field for everybody and a competitive playing field against our neighbors, I don't know how much dough we have for one-time efforts like this. And frankly, we're going to do more investigation into, when I say investigation, I'm not saying a nefarious situation exists here, but there's some protocol and kind of cookie-cutter stuff that goes along with this whole thing. And Link Chafee, you know, spoke up yesterday. I think we mentioned this. Sometimes I lose which show I said what on radio, weekdays 3 to 6 on WPRO. And here, Chafee, you know, kind of likened this, without saying it, to 38 Studios. And it's really not. But then again, it could be its own version of oops. It's just... I don't know. I just don't understand the philosophy of doing this, and we're stuck with it. And what's interesting is that the press around here just kind of rolls fait accompli that these kinds of things are normal and sundry, and you know, $19 million from the 195 Development Commission, another $19 million from the taxpayers. It's tax credits. Oh, but don't worry, we won't pay them out until the project's done. The project's done only means a building being built and a couple tenants coming in. Brown. And you know, a major entity out of Massachusetts. So we're going to do more on this, even though it has been passed and everybody kind of says, well, that's that. I think there's a lot more to this conversation, not only on that project, but on the philosophy of, again, picking winners and losers. I know that's kind of wordy, but it really bothers me that everyone just kind of yawns over this. In the meantime, Ward 3 in the city of Providence, Kevin Jackson is being recalled. And you may remember this story here last week. Dan McGowan at WPRI.com spoke with me about this on the radio yesterday. This is the guy, longtime counselor, and one of the chief movers and shakers behind the Community Safety Act, which just took a little bit of a burp. This guy is charged with embezzling 6 figures worth of money from his youth sports organization. He's also whacked for misspending $12,000 of campaign money. Now, he's innocent until proven guilty, no doubt, but most reasonable elected officials, when they're charged with something so, you know, compelling as this kind of situation, would just step away. And if they, you know, beat it in court, then come back, because the public is generally forgiving. But this guy barely gave up his majority position seat on the city council. Note, he didn't give up his desk, because that's where Dan McGowan interviewed him. Well, it's interesting. The citizens in Ward 3 decided they were going to recall him. And so today is a recall election. And what bothered me most about all of this is that there are 4 major statewide figures who live on the east side who are eligible to vote in this recall. Governor Raimondo, David Cicilline, Seth Magaziner, our treasurer, and Aaron Regenberg, the state representative. We talked about it yesterday as being embarrassing that all four of them told Dan McGowan at WPRI.com that they wouldn't say whether they would support the recall, that it was a private issue. Now, I railed on that here last night. I certainly railed on here on the radio yesterday afternoon. Lo and behold, Governor Raimondo's on with Gene Valicenti on WPRO this morning and said this.
I think that people deserve to have confidence and trust in their elected officials, and at this point I don't think that's possible for Councilman Jackson.
Yeah, and here's the verdict.
I plan to vote to recall.
Well, geez. Thanks, Governor. Nothing like some tardy leadership. Better than no leadership. All right, Jimmy Kimmel kind of poured his heart out last night on television, and there's hardly anybody in the country not talking about it. Here's some of what happened.
They did an echocardiogram, which is a sonogram of the heart, and found that Billy was born with a heart disease, something called tetralogy of Fallot with pulmonary atresia. And I want to say one other thing. President Trump last month proposed a $6 billion cut in funding to the National Institute of Health. And thank God our congressman made a deal last night to not go along with that. They actually increased funding by $2 billion. And I applaud them for doing that. 40% of the people who would have been affected by those cuts to the National Institute of Health are children, and it would have a major impact on a lot of great places, including Children's Hospital in Los Angeles. If your baby is going to die, and it doesn't have to, it shouldn't matter how much money you make. I think that's something that, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat or something else, we all agree on that, right? I mean, we do.
You know, listen, I understand. And by the way, I've had, not in terms of a heart condition, but I had the same experience with my little one who's soon to be graduating from college next week, 2 weeks. I've been in that neonatal care environment. I understand what it's like to be looking at the newborn in your family, perhaps not making it. I understand why he got full emotionally, and I have absolutely no criticism for him on that, I can promise you. But he's got it kind of wrong. He's got it backwards. The problem with health care in this country is that most likely the doctors aren't going, I mean, you tell me a case where the doctors leave a little baby untended. They'll perform procedures, and then the bill ends up being whose? Well, you know, the healthcare system's broken, and you know, I'm making a bipartisan, emphatic, you know, request / plea for some resolution on an improvement to Obamacare. I think is practical. I'm not sure he's got his entire facts straight when it comes to how cases like that are handled, but because he's making a kind of non-political plea for some resolve, perhaps it moves Congress for 10 minutes anyway. Alrighty, let's take a look at today's subject matter. This is the headline, one of the headlines amongst many that have engaged us on this thing called the line item veto. And Ken Block, who hasn't been around in a while, what have you been doing?
Hiding.
Hiding? Hiding? Working? Like making a living? You know, running your company? Doing all that kind of stuff?
Doing all that kind of stuff, cutting the grass, you know. It's living life.
Yes.
I'm liking it.
You got a little bit of a tan. You got a little thing. You got a little thing going. Big day at the legislature tomorrow?
Yeah, one in a series, right? It's these hearings are important because it helps prove to the legislature that the people want something done, right? When you have a good turnout of people coming to advocate for whatever, the more people that come, the more the legislature realizes, you know, it's something we have to pay attention to. And tomorrow at 5 o'clock, the line item veto is being heard by the Senate. And if we get the turnout we had last year, we'll have more than 100 people show up. And that really is meaningful, and it's important, because Rhode Island is only one of 6 states in the country that don't have a line item veto. And people don't take us seriously when we don't make an effort to change our bad ways. And let's face it, when it comes to our budgeting process, we have a bit of a joke of a process because the legislature, specifically the Speaker's office, can add anything they want to the budget at any point in time that they want, including the very last minute, and whatever gets into the budget stays because there's no way to look inside the budget and take specifically bad things out. It doesn't exist. It does almost everywhere else in the country, but it doesn't exist here. So the line item veto is about providing a check and a balance specifically against the Speaker and legislative leadership to ensure that if some shenanigans are going on, that a governor who's paying attention and is of a mind to call BS on some bad stuff can go ahead and do that. We missed that check and a balance in 2016 at the very last minute. A $20 million bond for Providenceport came out of left field. Hardly anyone understood what they were voting for when they approved it, and it was added and it went through, right? So this is the kind of thing that the line item veto can help put a bit of a check on. And yeah, it's a little bit arcane, but in the same way with the master lever, where we were at the time, we were one of 15 states left who had it, and it was time to get rid of it. By the way, only 8 states have it now, right? We're only one of 6 states that don't have a governor's line item veto, and it's time to bring it here. It's time to put sanity and a check and a balance on our budget process.
All right, we'll talk about the politics and practicality of this entire thing coming up here in just a moment. Just wanted to remind you that if you are looking for some sophistication on your smartphone when it comes to banking, you're not going to get any better sophistication than the Card Valet app from an Navigant Credit Union. Let me cheat here and tell you what it does. You can pay your bills, deposit checks, transfer money, set limits on your spending, use Apple or Samsung Pay, send and receive cash through texts, and a whole lot more. Navigant Credit Union, helping members enjoy life's journey since 1915, online at navigantcu.org. Right back with Ken. There is Speaker Nick Mattiello, who has steadfastly argued that we do not need the line item veto, although he has softened his argument against it slightly. The safe place is always to study something. It's there's a good chance that this week's effort to get this accelerated to the legislature, this line item veto, will end up in a study place again, right?
Potentially. The Speaker is incredibly powerful and has the ability, almost regardless of the political price, to delay if he so chooses. I view it as my job and the people who are advocating for the line item veto to make a compelling public pressure that he has trouble ignoring. And for a Speaker who barely hung on to his seat, he's on some shaky ground, thwarting the will of the people. And in this case, more than 70% of Rhode Islanders have been who were polled indicated they were supportive of the line item veto. In fact, the only people really against it are legislators. So, when you have that kind of optic going on and that kind of public support and the clear self-interest that the legislature is exhibiting by pushing back against it, it's not a winning position that he can hang on to for too terribly long.
No, the politics of this thing are fascinating.
Yeah.
It's hard to ask the body that will be most, negatively affected on the power quotient to do this, but they've, the Democratic Party has owned the legislature for such a long time, and the master lever was well to their benefit, and they finally succumbed there. A lot of that is your work, and so there you go. There's one key person here who has run this thing in second gear, and that's Governor Raimondo. She was on the radio this morning and said the following.
You want that line item veto. It's in the paper today.
I do. Almost I think 42 or 44 states have it. It's just about balance of power. It's another way to protect the taxpayers' money. And if everyone else has it, our people deserve it too. Just put it on the ballot. Let the people decide. If the people want it, let them have it. If they don't think we need it, fine.
It's really interesting. She's taken a speak when spoken to approach on this whole thing. Yeah, she's got a little op-ed that ran months ago, but being the person who has the seat right now in the executive branch, you'd think that she'd be more aggressive with it, but she has slow-played this the entire way.
Yeah, it would have been nice to have more public push from the governor's office, although the governor's office did author the bills that are pending now on the line item veto. They did a lot of research, and the version of the bill that is now pending in front of the legislature is a strong one, and it came directly out of the governor's office. So they have done some nice work on this, necessary work, and what we're looking at should be the bill that we pass. And if we pass it, it will be one of the stronger versions of that exists in the whole country.
Well, all due credit to the diligence done by your staff, that's what I expect.
Yeah.
That's not a bar that I think is incredibly Olympically high, but she has never, let's put it this way, you contrast the line item veto with the 2 years of free public college education. One's her baby, one's a,
Yeah.
what does this specific bill call for that's been different, if anything?
So previous years' versions of this bill were very non-specific. It basically said a line item veto, didn't lay out a lot of the important ins and outs of how it should work. And for example, while the override percentage is pretty basic, should the governor be able to reduce a line item as well as strike it, for example? Should the governor be able to modify the language that comes along with some spending items that can be very specific about how the money should or should not be spent? And the answer to all those is, in my opinion, is yes, those things should exist, and those things are in this version. So, that's all really, it's really good, actually, what we're looking at right now. The bill is the right bill. I believe that positionally, look, we're one scandal away from getting the line item veto. Let's face it, right? I mean, the legislature is so shaky. They've had so many problems coming out of it. We got the master lever after Speaker Fox blew up, right? And we've got Gallison, we've got Carnevale, we have all this stuff happening. Plus, we have the general positioning of this.
Just in case you guys missed this, Gallison is the former House Finance Chairman who got jammed up for his own personal legal representation of an estate. Bad stuff. Carnevale is the guy who votes in one district and primarily lives in another. Anyway.
So, and put all that up against the fact that 44 other states do it and we don't. And the only people beefing about it are legislators. And let's face it, legislators are there to serve the public interest, not their own self-interest. And they just don't have a leg to stand on by pushing back against this.
I think it's fascinating that you would suggest, that was not a subtle remark, and certainly something that you on the couch should view nonchalantly, and that is that you think that we are one major scandal away from the line item veto, that it takes another level of disgust from the public to do something which is entirely constructive for the public.
Right.
That's
Let's face it, that's reality with the way our legislature currently functions. That's what it takes to make change.
Let me clarify. This bill passes line item veto or passes a question on the ballot?
Question on the ballot.
Okay.
So the first hurdle is to get it on the ballot. The second hurdle is to get it elected on the ballot. But I'm pretty sure that we'll be able to get it elected if we can get it.
You never say it's a no-brainer, but I'm sure it will. I'm sure there's a couple of things on Ken's mind. There's some issues that I've opined on that I'm interested in his take. Stay with us. I opined early on in the program about the referendum in Ward 3 today. It's a city council in Providence. The Providence City Council's had a lot more light shown on them that I think they appreciate. But as a former candidate for governor, not once but twice, any thought about statewide elected officials who were hesitant? Governor Raimondo just kind of burped it up today that she'd vote for a recall, as if it's not something they have a responsibility to take a stand on. I mean, who you vote for as John Q. citizen is your own business. No one has to draw you out, but public figures have another standard, and then when controversy like this exists, you would think at least they would, one way or the other make an argument. She finally did, but others haven't.
Yeah, I mean, as a candidate myself at one point, there's always this fine line between too much information and where does the personal, confidential aspect of your life start and end versus what should be made public. But I'll tell you that, what's really shocking to me about this whole Jackson thing is his attitude and the attitude of the Providence City Council, which is almost like, what's the big deal? Well, I don't understand why they're recalling me, right? They give him a standing ovation on what was likely his last, council meeting. I mean, what is broken with the Providence City Council where this guy's not radioactive?
Right.
Right? So to
And
me,
neither is the president of the council, who's still near 50 grand in hock to the State Board of Elections on fines, fees, late fees, whatever the heck.
right, and rumored grand jury. Right, so there's all kinds of things that appear to be broken in the Providence City Council. And I'm speaking for myself as a citizen who pays a lot of money in taxes. I don't know if I want my state taxes going to a city like Providence, where it could be horrifically mismanaged by a cast of characters who, at best, are unsavory, and at worst, are corrupt. What are we doing, right? And what is Providence doing, and how do we protect state taxpayer interests when Providence takes so many state taxpayer dollars? I'm asking the question. I don't have a good answer, but it worries the heck out of me.
Link Chafee stepped up on this Wexford 195 project. There's no doubt he's revving up for a challenge.
Oh, yeah.
There's no doubt. He happens to be, in my humble opinion, I don't know, but his means to the end, but his end, that this is not a good idea, I happen to agree with. You have a take on that project?
$13 million for anything is a really big nut of money for Rhode Island to have to deal with.
Well, it's 40 cumulatively.
It's symptomatic of the fact that businesses really don't want to come here still. So we're left to try and bribe them, which is a losing proposition in my mind. We need to make changes that show business that we're a stable place for them to come. Look, Providence's finances all on their own should scare everybody away. They owe $2 billion in OPEB and unfunded pension liabilities. Where does that money come from?
OPEB is the health insurance, by the way.
So, yeah, it's a really hard problem, but it would be amazing to me that they can get anybody to move to that land right now.
Chafee rearing his head here clearly tells me that he's in the hunt. I'd be remiss if not asking you. I mean, you've taken 2 stabs. Are you in the hunt?
I'm very busy at the office right now.
This work that you've done, by the way, I know that you've never, you and I haven't talked in a long time. This work that you've done through Watchdog RI, the line item veto, the master lever, has been unique and exclusive, and your credit as a citizen for having worked this thing as hard. It doesn't necessarily mean, oh, you want to run for office, but the question's always going to loom out there. Are you one of these players that are coming in? Have you thought about it, or is it?
I'm watching it with great interest. I mean, it looks like it's going to be a zoo. Right? I mean, who knows how many people are going to be running right now, right? It's going to be a lot of people. I have a lot on my plate right now that's professionally oriented, and I'm totally focused on that. If the time comes to get involved politically, I'll get involved if the timing is right and if I think the opportunity is right. I'm not done with politics, but I don't have any idea if this cycle is one I'm going to participate in or not. I just don't know.
The hearing tomorrow is where on the line on veto?
5 o'clock, room 313 at the State House.
They serving anything?
I will have the drink card out and rolling.
Yeah. Bring your own bagged lunch. Ken, thanks for the work. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Dan.
Final word when we come back. Education issues are always front and center here in Rhode Island, and there have been some changes to some of the standardized testing procedures, graduation requirements, all of that. The Ed Commissioner, Commissioner Wagner, will be here tomorrow night to tell us about it ahead of some announcements he's going to make. So tune in. See you at 3 on the radio on WPRO tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Good night.